Chapter 13. Raid. Echo's objections melted the moment she saw the girls in one of the cages located in the back of the warehouse. She gave Johnny a swift, meaningful glance that Ellie didn't see and politely excused herself, saying that she needed to use the ship's facilities. Johnny, however, knew she had gone off to use her communication mirror to contact their parents herself and arrange for their cargo to be stolen. Echo was a very practical woman, but she was not heartless. Ali smiled and gestured for the girls to come forward for Johnny's inspection. They gracefully stood up from the chairs and couches and walked obediently to the front of the prison. The cage was actually nicely appointed, with a teeny windowless bathroom built into the back wall, complete with a curtain hanging over the door for privacy, in addition to the furnishings and carpets that made the place seem almost like a spacious waiting room. But they didn't change the fact they were in a cage, albeit a comfortable one. "Lovely, aren't they?" Ali said proudly. Johnny looked upon the girls in their matching costumes of red velvet and silk dresses that fit their forms flatteringly, and leaving little to the imagination from the waist up. Each of them wore matching golden circles around their necks, wrists, and ankles. Johnny knew that the jewelry was actually some kind of restraining charm that would keep them from escaping, and he worried what they might do to the slaves if they were stolen. Yet he was confident that Egg would have realized what the jewelry was for, and their mother would know how to remove them. "Yes, I've seldom seen so much loveliness in one place at one time," Johnny replied appreciatively. He hit it well, but Johnny was hard-pressed not to turn and punch Ali across the jaw and sending him sprawling. His guess that Richard's future concubines would be young girls had been correct, much to his dismay. The oldest girl couldn't have been more than 16, and the youngest looked to be about 12. He hadn't been lying when he said they were beautiful. Ali had excellent taste and a good eye for the lovely and exotic. The girls ranged from well-endowed to slender and athletic in form. They varied from Anglo-Arabic to one that must have been Nubian with her almost black skin, who appeared to be the eldest of the 30 girls there. They smiled prettily and looked pleased with Johnny's appreciation, but he could also see the traces of the tears on the younger girls' faces that had been hastily wiped away. He could also sense that behind the smiles and demure posturing was fear, uncertainty, and anxiety. Ali sighed with mild regret and then said, "It's a shame the protocols require that they be caged like this. It's hard on them. I hadn't selected them from my finest stock. My client wanted to make sure that they were untouched and healthy, both mentally and physically. I had to charge him extra for the services of a healer to make sure of that, and for the services of the practitioner of magic for the charms they're wearing to ensure their obedience without leaving marks on their tender flesh. It took me some time to train them properly, but they know their place and will do nothing too inappropriate. I hope that you have better combinations on your ship. You need not fear them trying to escape. They can't, not while I still own them. The charms will cause them great pain if they try. When I pass the ownership to my client, he will control the charms and so he could have no trouble keeping them disciplined either. But I don't think he'll have any problems with them. They're quite docile." Johnny nodded and said, "Our ships are being completely offloaded. It will be easy to convert one of my cargo cars to accommodate your fine ladies. I trust that you'll have some bedding for them? It's a 2-day trip to the palace." "Yes, of course," Ali agreed amiably. Then he turned to the girls that had been standing quietly, lined up in a double row, and kindly said to them, "All right, go and relax. It'll be a few hours yet before you can go to your new master's house. Might as well get some rest while you can. He's eager for your company, and I don't think he'll be giving you much when he gets a chance to enjoy it." The girls all bowed low and murmured, "Yes, Master Ali." Then they retired to their former seats, some of the older ones picking up the younger girls on their laps to hold them comfortingly. Ali smiled and admired them affectionately. "Ah, they are darling," he said as he turned away to walk towards the dock so he could supervise the loading of the rest of the cargo into Echo's and Johnny's ships. Then he said, "I cannot allow you to take advantage of them. My client was very specific with his request. He wants virgins so he can personally finish training them. I hope you understand." Johnny smiled reassuringly as he followed alongside him. "The thought never occurred to me. Be sure that I'll treat them with respect, and I'll do my best to ensure that they arrive safe and sound along with the rest of your cargo." "Thank you, Mr. Smith," Ali smiled. "I'm glad we came to an understanding about our business arrangement. Not everyone has been so honorable. It's the reason for our delays of delivery of my cargo. I had to fire more than one cargo runner for trying to take advantage of them, and I had to look for someone else to take my orders to the palace. My client has become impatient. I fear if there are any more delays, he'll dock my pay upon delivery of his goods." "I'll do my best to get you there quickly," Johnny answered as he paused near the loading docks to watch Ali's camp gear being loaded into the Dunlay's first cargo car, along with a few heavy chests full of the girls' things they needed for their journey to the palace and their new lives as Richard's personal whores. Johnny was tucking in Precious late that night after a long day's travel into the desert. Her room was Spartan and teeny with a small comfortable bed, lots of storage built into the walls, and a small window. It had once been a guest room for his passengers, but when he adopted Precious he gave it to her and did what he could to make other arrangements for his occasional passengers in the cargo cars. A part of those combinations included a door with a lock, leading directly into the cars behind the main one they lived in. Their guests would have to knock to gain admission into the front car, and Precious was told never to open it. Their guests would have to wait until Johnny personally opened the door for them. This was a bit inconvenient for his passengers, but they were often understanding. They knew Johnny wanted to make sure Precious was safe, so they would politely wait until he came for them, escorting them one at a time to the bathroom or the kitchen sink for water as needed. Johnny did his best to make sure that they didn't have to wait long, so no one got upset about being locked out of the ship's only bathroom. Johnny kissed Precious's forehead as she reached an arm out from under her blankets and hugged his neck. Goldie shifted, muttering at Precious to stop wiggling the bed so much from somewhere under the blankets. Johnny whispered, "Don't go outside for any reason and keep your head down. Grandpa told us the Green Riders are coming up to raid our camp. They'll be armed and they'll have to be a bit rough with us if we're to avoid a suspicion. They won't lay a hand on you. Grandma will have their hides if they do. All the same, stay out of sight. It's safer that way." "But what about you and Aiko?" Precious asked in concern as she lay back and wiggled under their covers to get more comfortable, eliciting another complaint from Goldie. "I don't want them to hurt either of you. And if they hit you in the belly or knock you over too hard, it could hurt the baby. I should be there to keep you safe." Johnny smiled reassuringly, stroking back a lock of her hair that had fallen across her forehead. "It won't be that rough. What they'll do will look much worse than it'll actually be. We'll be all right." Precious nodded reluctantly and then closed her eyes. Johnny headed off for the bathroom for what seemed like the 100th time that day. After finishing his business in there, he caught a glimpse of himself in the wall mirror. At first he only saw his stocky black beard illusion self. With an effort of will, he could see past it and look upon his true appearance. He was still lean and tall, but now his once flat belly was visibly rounded, and his chest looked slightly more feminine. He laid a hand on his belly and felt his nephew move around in there. He could even see his movements in the mirror. It looked a little more than odd, and Johnny was glad no one could see through the illusions if he didn't want them to. He sighed and went outside where the 30 girls and their master sat on rugs around a small campfire. Elisa insisted that they come out of the cargo car and take some time to get some fresh air and stretch their legs. He knew that keeping a lot of people in a crowded space for too long wasn't healthy. He also brought along some camp gear, enough for himself and his charges so they would have more room to sleep in. He was letting them stay up for a little while longer before sending them off to their tents. Aiko sat waiting for him by the fire on one of the rugs, wearing a heavy wool coat. In the Red Sands Desert, the days were often blistering hot, especially during the summer months, and the nights were always chilly year-round. Johnny sat down next to Aiko and accepted a hot cup of strong mint tea with honey and vanilla. She had also taken to drinking the same beverage after she became curious and wanted to try it. She found she liked it very much. The faint wind shifted and Lee got a whiff of the odors coming from their cups and wrinkled his nose, thinking that the tea stank, but he kept his comments to himself. The girls were dressed more practically for the desert night. Each wore an identical set of loose pants made of soft, thick violet fabric, slippers and warm stockings, loose white long-sleeve shirts of white cotton, and matching wool sweaters over top of them. To complete the ensemble, each had a heavy black robe. They stared quietly at the fire, lost in their own thoughts. The older ones hugged the 12-year-olds. A few of them were also wrapped in blankets. They had been fed and watered, and Lee used cleaning charms on them so they would remain clean and healthy. Johnny would have let them use his shower, but Ali had thought it would be more efficient to use the charms. Johnny thought he had a point. 30 girls lining up to use one teeny bathroom would take a long time and place more strain on his water filters than they were already doing. The water system was already working overtime thanks to the need to use his toilet. He was going to have to refresh his water tanks when he made his next stop. The night was dark and silent, lit only by the moon and stars. There was nothing beyond their camp, which was set up a short distance from the road. A small sound in the distance caught their attention. A low humming growing louder by the moment and coming up the road. A minute later, a sand ship even bigger and longer than Johnny's dune lady, its driver making no effort to hide its gaudy colors and lights, was zipping past in a blast of wind and loud recorded music. It was gone in seconds, and a moment or two later the sound of its engines and the loud music vanished into the night. Some cargo runners regularly pulled all-nighters. It was safer to keep moving than to stop and camp for the night on this particular stretch of road. Johnny had done that plenty of times in his career, but never with live cargo. Like Ali, he thought it best to stop and make sure that his passengers had time to stretch their legs, use the outdoors for bodily functions whenever possible, to ease the strain on his own plumbing, and get some fresh air to help maintain their health. If one person in the group was sick with something contagious and kept in close quarters, it could spread like wildfire. Fortunately, none of his charges appeared to have so much as a sniffle, so that was good. No one spoke. They were all lost in their own thoughts and taking comfort in the closeness of their companions. Well, except Ali, who sat alone. As relaxed as Johnny and Aiko looked, they were filled with apprehension and anticipation. Waiting was always the worst part of any battle plan, almost worse than when the action finally starts. Time slipped quietly by as Johnny and Aiko finished their tea. The girls started to doze off, and Ali looked like he was thinking about telling them to go to bed. Ali, it turned out, was mostly kind to his slaves. Oh, he would deal with them harshly enough whenever they disobeyed. That was what the charmed jewelry was for, to cause pain without leaving marks on their flesh. But so long as they did as they were told, he seemed genuinely kind and caring. Ow! Woof, 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 called an animal off in the distance. It sounded like a dog, but not quite. Everyone stiffened and looked about. The girls remained silent, forbidden to speak unless spoken to, and they looked ill at ease at the sudden strange noise. "What was that?" Ali said as he stood, looking around apprehensively. "Dragon," Johnny answered. "There's nothing to worry about. They tend to avoid people when they can." "Ow!" called another dragon from a different direction, this one even closer. The girls huddled together even closer, fear now evident on their lovely faces. "Maybe you should get back inside your ship, just in case," Ali said, looking anxious. Suddenly 3 short barks came from the third direction. Then all was silent and still as before. They listened intently and waited. Nothing. Johnny smiled and said, "See? Nothing to worry about. Dragons are nothing to worry about, unless they have riders." Ali growled as he suspiciously looked into the darkness in the directions where he had heard the calls. "I know about the dragon clans and their tame beasts." Echo almost protested his use of the term tame beasts, then decided against it. Johnny shrugged, feigning lack of concern. "Suit yourself. I'll go open the cargo door for you girls." He stood to do as Ali requested, when suddenly huge shadowy beasts seemed to come out of nowhere at a frightening speed. Echo screamed, doing her best to act terrified, running to Johnny's side for protection she knew was unneeded. Johnny clung to her, doing a convincing job of looking surprised and afraid. The Green Riders were finally making their move. The riders were covered in dark loose clothing. They kept their heads hidden under turbans and kerchiefs over their faces, so no single individual stood out from the others. A few had long curved swords drawn, but most kept theirs sheathed. The dragons they rode were the size of huge draft horses. They were wingless and powerfully built with horse-like necks, powerful jaws, with 2 small horns on their noses. They also had 12-inch long, nearly straight horns that sprouted just behind their eye ridges, and a line of shorter graduated spikes from the top of their heads to almost to their withers. The males sported bright red eye ridges and were slightly smaller than the females. Both sexes were solid dark emerald green in color, with the classic V-shaped snake scoot-like scales from just behind their chins to just past the bases of their long tails. Each carried one rider that clung to their solid backs with the aid of a saddle. With no headgear and none needed to direct them to where their riders wished to go, they came charging from all directions, grinning fiercely with their sharp dog-like teeth. In seconds the dragons and their riders were upon them, all power and grace. They were highly organized, and before anyone realized what was happening, they leaned over, picked up the slave girls, and deftly threw them over the broad backs of their dragons. The girls screamed in terror, and their master tried to fight back. For the sake of appearances, Johnny shouted and waved a heavy burning stick he had picked out of the fire, pretending he was trying to strike the nearest rider with it. The rider he was threatening gave him a contemptuous snort, and his dragon turned and knocked both Johnny and Eiko over with his tail before tearing off. His rider picked up one of the youngest girls, who was crying in terror and too frightened to make a run for it, and flung her over the dragon's back. She was barely able to right herself before the dragon took off once again, at an amazing speed for a creature so large. All the poor girl could do was hang on for dear life. Johnny dropped the stick and spat the sand out of his mouth the dragon accidentally kicked into his face as he ran away. The slap of his tail had been deliberate, however, purposely knocking them over without doing any harm to for the same reason Johnny had been swinging this flaming stick at his rider. Ali swore and flew an airback as he ran a short distance after them in a futile effort to run them down and retrieve his prized harem. He fell to his knees, panting and holding his bloody right arm. The riders were rougher with him than Johnny and Eiko. As Johnny regained his feet with a little of Eiko's help, he noticed Ali was loosely clutching a long knife in his right hand and understood why he had been cut with one of the Green Rider's swords. Whether it was in self-defense or in defense of his dragon, the rider would not have taken kindly to being threatened. Ali was actually lucky to be alive. "Are you all right?" Eiko whispered to Johnny as she pressed a hand to his belly as a way of silently asking if the baby was okay too. "We're fine," he whispered back in reply as he grasped her hand and gave it a reassuring squeeze before letting go and moving towards Ali, who looked nearly ready to faint. "Get my first aid kit. It's under the bathroom sink." Glancing at Ali and noticing that he was injured, she nodded and went to the dune lady to fetch it. "Hey, you okay?" Johnny asked Ali as he placed a hand on his shoulder, feigning concern. "They took my girls!" Ali cried as he turned his ashen face to look back at Johnny. "Where's your gun? Why aren't you armed? I thought all cargo runners are supposed to be armed." "I don't own a gun," Johnny said apologetically, which was flat-out lie, but Ali didn't know that. "I was never a very good shot anyway." Ali swore and grimaced at the pain in his upper arm. "Sorry, I can't get your slaves back," Johnny told him sadly, which was true, "but I can fix your arm." "You incompetent oaf!" Ali spat as he stood swaying on his feet. His face, already pale, grew paler still and he almost passed out. Johnny steadied him, ignoring the insult, and helped him to keep his balance as they made their way back to the dune lady, as Eiko emerged with a small wooden box he requested. "Take it back into the kitchen," Johnny ordered kindly. Eiko nodded and went back inside. Soon Johnny was cleaning Ali's wound. It was a gash down his arm about 4 inches long and in need of stitching. It was then Johnny noticed the control charm on Ali's wrist to help keep the girls captive was gone. Apparently they managed to steal that too. He did a mental celebration as he used the herbs and influence of his kit to clean and numb the area. Then he neatly stitched and bandaged the wound, gave his patient a sleeping draught, then sent him to bed in the first cargo car. The girls were free and he trusted they would be well cared for. His parents would make sure of that. Johnny and Eiko later checked on Precious and Goldie, reassuring them that they were okay. That done, Eiko went to her sand ship and to do the same for her 2 rats. They both packed up the tents, rugs, and blankets and put them back into the first cargo car with the loudly snoring Ali on his bedroll, who didn't so much as twitch, even though they weren't being completely quiet. Johnny slid the big door on the side of the car closed. Then he and Eiko went back to the kitchen to set up the bed and get some sleep.